कृष्ण। जय हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदना व्रज जनरंजना जनरंजना यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद निताय गौर हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल। इस्कॉन लिबर्टी संस्थापक आचार्य जगत गुरु श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि बोल। हरे कृष्ण। Welcome all of you to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. This is a weekly class on 7th canto, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, chapter 2, verse number 1. 7th canto is entitled The Science of God, and the second chapter is entitled The Hiranyakashipu, the king of the demons. ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्ठिकी। The verse is as follows. Shri Narada Uvacha Bhratari evam vinihite harina krodamurtina Hiranyakashipu rajan paryatapya drushashucha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Shri Narad Muni said, My dear King Yudhishthir, when Lord Vishnu, in the form of Varaha, the boar, killed Hiranyaksha, Hiranyaksha's brother Hiranyakashipu was extremely angry and began to lament. Purport. Yudhishthir had inquired from Narad Muni why Hiranyakashipu was so envious of his own son Prahlad. Narad Muni began narrating the story by explaining how Hiranyakashipu had become a staunch enemy of Lord Vishnu. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकम् नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्यनाम्ने गौरत्से नमः हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So we are discussing from the 7th canto, 2nd chapter, verse number 1. The 7th canto had begun with the inquiry by Parikshit Maharaj about the impartial nature of God. Is God partial to his devotees, and does he side with the devotees and doesn't favor the demons? And Narad Muni narrated an historical incident. Um, Narad Muni, who was present at the occasion of the Rajasuya sacrifice, and when Yudhishthir Maharaj had witnessed uh, the killing of Shishupal, that time Shishupal's soul had merged into the body of Lord Sri Krishna, and it was an episode of astonishment for Yudhishthir Maharaj, and he had inquired, how did this happen? Such a envious, blasphemous person, Shishupal, attained the liberation which is sought after by the greatest of the Gyanis, and they have to toil hard for achieving such a destination. In response, Narad Muni uh, starts narrating the episode of birth of Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, and then their second birth as Kumbhakarna and Ravan, third birth as Shishupal and Dantavakra. And in these series of the births they have taken as a curse, he discloses that Hiranyakashipu was killed by an uh, astonishing, wonderful incarnation of Lord Sri Vishnu in the form of Nrsimhadev when he insulted his dear saintly son Prahlad. He tried to kill Prahlad, who was his own son, Hiranyakashipu's own son. And Yudhishthir Maharaj poses an inquiry in front of Narad Muni. He says that how is it father is very affectionate to his own son, and why was that Hiranyakashipu was so inimical towards his innocent and saintly son Prahlad. And in response to the question, Narad Muni is narrating this episode to Yudhishthir Maharaj at the occasion of the Rajasuya sacrifice. And Narad Muni says, my dear King Yudhishthir, when Lord Vishnu in the form of Varaha, the boar, killed Hiranyaksha, Hiranyaksha's brother, Hiranyakashipu was extremely angry and began to lament. We see when Lord Shri Krishna describes two entities in the 16th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita to Arjun, he says there are two kinds of personalities in this universe. There are the Devas and there are the Asuras. And Devas are defined as Vishnu Bhaktas Smrito Deva, Asurastad Viparya. Those who are devotees of Lord Sri Krishna or Vishnu, they are called Devas. And all other persons are called demons or Asuras. And Srila Madhvacharya also makes an interesting, he uh, cites an interesting definition of Asuras. He says, Asuras are people who take pleasure in the enjoyment of life. And these people are called Asuras. Krishna explains in Srimad Bhagavad Gita that Dvau Loka Dvau Bhuta Sargo Lokesmin Daiva Asura Evacha. And the Devatas are more in number than the Asuras. Sorry, the Asuras are more in number in the material world than the Devatas. And they have certain tendencies which create a lot of disturbance in the smooth functioning of the material universe. And when there is too much chaos and all the devatas or innocent people, they plead to Lord Vishnu for help. He appears in the form of his incarnation to salvage the living entities and re-establish the principles of religion. That's what Sri Krishna says in Gita, Paritranaya sadhuna vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. And this verse describes that Lord Vishnu, Lord Sri Krishna, in the form of Varaha, this is the first incarnation he assumes to regulate the universe. He killed Hiranyakashipu's brother, Hiranyaksha. And Hiranyaksha was a very nefarious and strong person who always was by the side of Hiranyakashipu in whatever atrocities he tried to commit. And Hiranyakashipu had enjoyed great support from Hiranyaksha, and Hiranyaksha was a great well-wisher, so to say well-wisher of Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyaksha wielded all his power, all his might to uh, create disturbance in the society and to create terror and fear in the society just to please Hiranyakashipu, just to gain favors of Hiranyakashipu. And that was their relation. um, we see in this world all the people, they want to take shelter of those who have higher powers, those who are extremely powerful, extremely wealthy, because we can gain some favors from them. And Hiranyaksha was a kind of that person. Lord Brahma, he describes in his prayers to Lord Vishnu in the second canto about the appearance of Lord Varahadev in order to destroy this demon Hiranyaksha. This is described in second chapter, second canto, seventh chapter and first verse. And he says, Brahmovacha yatrodhyatah क्षितितलोद्धरणाय बिभ्रत् क्रौडिं तनुं सकल यज्ञमयी मनन्तः अंतर्महार्ण उपागतम आदिदैत्यम तम दंष्ट्रयाद्रिम इव वज्रधरो ददार. So this is a very interesting verse which is described by Lord Brahma. He says, when there was a calamity in the universe in the form of Hiranyaksha exploiting the resources of Mother Earth, and this purport describes what were the activities of Hiranyaksha. He was after achieving the riches from Earth planet. It was we hear many times that Hiranyaksha just put the earth in the hid the earth in the Garbhodak ocean, deep down in the Garbhodak ocean. But Prabhupada very succinctly um, documents here why the earth had fallen into the girths, into the deepest recesses of Garbhodak ocean. And he says that Hiranyaksha was the great exploiter of rush, of the gold rush. So he wanted to amass the resources of Mother Earth to such an extent that Earth planet became helpless. She lost the potency to stay afloat in the space. He created such a disturbance, such a havoc he wreaked that the Earth planet couldn't sustain its own position in the space, and it fell down into the abyss, into the deep recesses of the Garbhodak ocean. And the Lord is the maintainer of the whole creation of the material world. And he appeared in the form of a boar incarnation. And this boar form wasn't like ordinary 5 feet, 4 feet boar. It was a form which occupied the entire universe. We know the span of the universe is 400 billion miles. And 400 billion miles, half of it is filled with Garbhodak ocean. So 200 billion miles is the span of the space in this universe. And all of this space was occupied by Lord Varaha when he appeared in the form of this incredible incarnation. And Hiranyaksha is also described in this verse as Adi Daitya. So he was the first demon of the universe, and Lord Brahma, he is called the Adi Deva. So he was the first demigod of the universe. And Jayadev Goswami, he describes wonderfully about this pastime in his Dashavatar Stotra. He says, Vasati Dashana Shikhare Dharani Tava Lagna Shashini Kalanka Kaleva Nimagna Keshava Dhrita Shukara Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare. So the planet Earth rested on your tusks and it appeared like the moon engraved with spots. O Keshav, O Supreme Lord, who have assumed the form of a boar, O Lord. So when Hiranyaksha was killed, Hiranyakashipu was so much disturbed, and the reason is because he was supporting all the activities of Hiranyakashipu. So it is explained that demons always defy the authority of God and of the scriptures. That's why they are called demons. And 16th chapter of Gita, again Lord Shri Krishna describes to Arjuna uh, what is the nature of demoniac people or demoniac tendencies, how they work. 16th chapter describes pravrittim cha nivrittim cha vidur janana surah. Asuras, they don't know what is pravritti and what is nivritti. They do not care to know this. So they can do anything for sense gratification and they become entangled. The foolish people think that they are free to act as they like, but it is not possible. So this entire chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita is dedicated to the divine and demoniac qualities. It is the 16th chapter and it describes the demons say that this world is unreal, there is no foundation, no God in control, and they say that the world is produced of sex desire and has no other cause other than lust. Um, and this is the conclusion of the demoniac people, and they have lost to themselves and they don't have any intelligence. They engage in unbeneficial, horrific works meant to destroy the world. So the activities of the demoniac people are that they engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. And it further explains, this is a very interesting narration by Lord Sri Krishna. And when we try to uh, we can say see who belongs to which nature, divine or demoniac, we can go to the verses of this chapter and see who fits where. एताम दृष्टिम अवष्टभ्य नष्टात्मनो अल्पबुद्धया प्रभवति उग्र कर्माण क्षयाय जगतो हितः. And further they say, Lord Sri Krishna says, kamam ashritya dushpuram dambhamana madanvitah mohat grahitvad asadgrahat pravartante ashuchi vrataha. So they are attracted by insatiable lust. They take shelter of insatiable lust, absorbed in conceit of pride and false prestige. The demoniac, thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. When we say that demoniac people, they are thinking that they can do whatever they like, but it is not possible. Lord Sri Krishna tells that each and every person is bound to act in a certain way according to his nature, according to the dictates of the material energy. Prakrite kriyamani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Still, each person thinks that I am the doer and I am the enjoyer. Ahankara vimudhatma, he is bewildered by the false ego and he thinks that I am the doer. Karta aham iti manyate. But the scriptures, the Shastras, they tell us that this human form of life is not to be used in such a way. The proper use of human form of life is mentioned as labdha sudurlabhamidam bahu sambhavante. After many births, hundreds and millions of births, this uh, rare human form of life is achieved by a living entity, and it has a purpose. This human form of life has a purpose. It's a very special purpose. The animals engage in all the propensities according to their desires and according to the modes they are influenced by. And the human form given to a living entity is with a very special purpose. And it is said, Labdhva sudurlabham. It is very rare and achieved after many births. Bahu sambhavante. Manushyam arthadam. It is with a very specific purpose. It has a special purpose, and it awards great value to the human birth. Though the human body is anitya, it is not eternal. One who has sober intelligence, turnam yatet na patot anumrityum yavat. Before this body falls dead, an intelligent person utilizes it in a very special way. Nishreyasaya. He uses it for ultimate liberation. Nishreyasaya. Vishaya khalu sarvatasyat. The other things are available in any other species of life. We can eat, have sex, we can sleep, we can defend ourselves. Those things are available in any other form of life. So, when we talk about the different sections of living entities according to their work, the asuras don't know what to do in this human form of life, and they don't care to know what to do and what not to do. Pravrittim cha nivrittim cha janana vidurasura. And we see in today's day and age, it's not only about Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha millions of years ago. In today's day and age, we can see the demoniac propensities in full force acting and creating a lot of disturbance in the society. We see there are unlimited number of slaughterhouses being maintained, and animals are being killed without hesitation, and still they are called spiritual leaders. Those who are heading the institutions, they are still called great spiritual religious leaders. So this sinful life has been going on full on without any restrictions, and people don't want to care what happens to them in the next life. This is all due to arrogance and pride. and this everything comes to an end ultimately. uh, a living entity has to accept another body because of the work he's performing, the kind of activities a living entity performs. We think that nature is my property and I can do anything with nature to fulfill my desires and wishes. But the nature is not our property. We can see from the example of Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyaksha, he wanted to exploit Earth's resources to such an extent that she just fainted and fell down in the Garbhodak ocean. But still, he was diminished and killed by the extraordinary power of Lord Varahadev. Hiranyakashipu also wanted to set in place every natural uh, situation to his benefit. He wanted the fruits and flowers in the summer season when they were not present, when they were not due to fructify in the summer season. He wanted a very pleasant weather, cool breeze in the summer season. He wanted just the right amount of rain, just the right amount of air, just the right amount of sunshine, everything at his beck and call. And he wanted everyone to follow his instructions. He wanted to dominate each and every living entity in the universe and be glorified as their Lord and Master. And that's why he tried to control so much. And when he saw that Hiranyaksha is being killed by someone whom he cannot control, he thought that he is the supreme controller of the universe. But when he came to understand and realize that he is not the supreme controller, he got so infuriated. And that is the nature again of a demoniac person. Krishna says in Gita that when काम एष क्रोध एष रजो गुण समुद्भवा महाशनो महापापमा विद्धि ही एनम इह वैरिणा. Calm means a specific personal desire to have own gratification, to gratify own senses, own mind, own ego. That is called calm. And when it is not satisfied, when it is not fulfilled, it generates a lot of anger and frustration. And Hiranyakashipu, he though he was a very knowledgeable person, we think that demons they don't have knowledge. Sometimes we think there may be a perception that demons don't have a lot of knowledge. Only the um, uh, godly people or the divine people may have more knowledge. But we see all the disturbances created by ungodly people, they are created using a lot of great intelligence. Like we see in today's day and age, there are so many terrorist activities going on, so many um, ways to create disturbance in the peaceful living of the civilization. And they are the disturbances are created not just simply by using some hand bombs, and it is a systematic intelligently executed program to create disturbances. So the demons have those kind of intelligent propensities, but they use it in a different direction, and that's why they are destined for unworthy and unbeneficial outcome. And Srila Prabhupada describes that these people have to take another body and be subjected to the laws of material nature. Hiranyaksha, he symbolizes unsatiable, insatiable desire to exploit the resources. And Srila Prabhupada, he explains interestingly that the human civilization who is trying to exploit the resources by drilling holes for taking oil and all the metals and all the coal, everything from earth, if it is done in a very exploitful way to disturb the ecological balance and to fulfill our own selfish needs without acknowledging the fact that there is a supremely divine arrangement which is governing the universe, then we are bound to reap the uh, undesired effects of those activities. And this chapter is a very interesting chapter, and it is entitled Hiranyakashipu, the King of Demons. So the whatever demoniac propensities we find, they are exhibited by Hiranyakashipu to the fullest. And that's how he sets the scene for Lord Singhadev to appear. He goes on committing so many atrocities against the saintly people, against the common people, and he tries to disturb the religious ceremonies. He tries to disturb the austerities and the religious activities of all the rishis and saints. He destroys all the places of worship of Lord Vishnu, and that's how he creates a very fearful situation in the universe. And Hiranyakashipu, he further acquires such a great, astonishing, and unimaginable power that even the demigods, just by the flick of his eyebrows, they disappear and go on in hiding. So when he sets the stage like this, and the final um, task which costs him his life, the final scene which costs him his life, was set because of the atrocities he commits against his own son Prahlad. And we keep hearing this story from our childhood that Hiranyakashipu, he did so much austerity. 60,000 years he stood on one leg, and he tried to propitiate Lord Brahma, and he asked for a very difficult boon from Lord Brahma, which is very um, uh, difficult to obtain. And Brahma also granted him the boon. And just a small 5-year-old boy, who was his own son, Prahlad, he couldn't accept Hiranyakashipu's ways. He was a devout person, dedicating his life to Lord Sri Krishna, Lord Vishnu. and Hiranyakashipu couldn't tolerate this. So even his own son was the cause of his disturbed mental peace, and he tried to torment Prahlad Maharaj in so many nefarious ways. But due to the strong faith Prahlad had in Lord Vishnu, the protection offered by Lord Vishnu, he was protected in all the impositions of difficulties by Hiranyakashipu upon Prahlad. And as it is said that Hiranyakashipu was the personification of lust. The very name Hiranyakashipu is the meaning of the word Hiranyakashipu is who is after Hiranya means gold and Kashipu means soft bed. So these tendencies when someone is after so much of material wealth and the material enjoyment the human body offers or the life offers, that creates a very unstable situation for the living entity, and he has to undergo so much of turmoil because of that. And it is exhibited by the example of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. Both of them were ultimately destroyed by Lord Varaha and Lord Nrsimhadev. And there is a profound lesson for all of us to abide by the laws of God, to abide by Lord Shri Krishna's instructions for our own good and for the benefit of all the people whom we are associated with. We keep hearing and seeing in all the movies and the stories two kinds of people, good people and bad people. And ultimately, it is shown that good people always win. Most of the narratives are like that. And this was the original hero and villain fight. Original hero is Lord Nrsimhadev, Lord Varahadev, and the personification of the vilifying um, ungodly tendencies is Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. When we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, we are appealing and pleading to the Lord to manifest His presence in our heart and uh, purify our heart for Him to reside there and for us to dedicate our lives uh, to live our life in a godly manner and not to give way to the demoniac propensities which are hovering all around, especially in this day and age. The ungodly, unclean, and very self uh, aggrandizing propensities, Atma Sambhavita Stabdha Dhanamanavadanvita. 16th chapter describes the demoniac propensity is Atma Sambhavita. He thinks about his own self only, not about the welfare of others and not about the welfare of the nature and not about the welfare of ultimately his own true self. He thinks that he's selfish, but real selfishness is defined as being a godly person. being a devotee of Lord Sri Krishna, because that awards the greatest benediction of being in relation with the greatest of all personalities, Lord Sri Krishna, and being happy serving him according to his desire. And that's how the living entity finds his own place, which is called the constitutional position. Constitutional position is a position which gives the greatest of comfort, which gives the greatest of joy to any person. The constitutional position of a baby is to be in the lap of his mother, and happily enjoy the company of his mother's protection and the love. So Prahlad enjoyed uh, the protection, love, and shelter offered by Lord Nrsimhadev. And this canto, seventh canto, particularly offers um, each and every person the opportunity to take shelter of Lord Sri Krishna, be happy in his shelter, protection, and guidance, and ultimately be happy in the constitutional position of a living entity, that is to serve Lord Sri Krishna with love and devotion. And as we'll be reading further, we will be seeing two contrast personalities, Prahlad Maharaj, and dead opposite to him is Hiranyakashipu. And both of them exhibit the extreme form of their own natures. So to say, natures. Prahlad exhibits the extreme, the highest form of devotion, and Hiranyakashipu exhibits the highest form of demoniac qualities. And ultimately, it happens Hiranyakashipu is also killed by Nrsimhadev. But in killing Hiranyakashipu, Lord Nrsimhadev awards him the highest benefit of being killed by his own hands on his lap, and ultimately Hiranyakashipu also is guided to a very exalted destination by the grace of by the grace of Prahlad Maharaj and Lord Nrsimhadev. So this canto inspires us to take shelter of Lord Sri Krishna and ultimately conquer or all the demoniac propensities which may disturb our conscience and disturb the peace and love we have inherently with us. So let us all go through the canto very enthusiastically. We have a lot of prayers by Prahlad Maharaj in the future chapters, which are glorified by greatest of all the devotees since time immemorial. And Prahlad Maharaj's example is cited amongst the greatest assembly of devotees as the greatest of Mahajans. It is said the 12 Mahajans, Prahlad, Janako, Bhishma, Balir, Vyasakir, Vayam, the 12 Mahajans listed by Yamraj, of them Prahlad Maharaj is considered to be the highest, because he inspires and he gives so much of courage to each and every practicing devotee to ultimately take benefit of the human form of life, to take shelter of the process of devotional service. हरे कृष्णा। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। So please stay tuned for the further episodes of Srimad Bhagavatam 7th canto every Saturday 7:30 a.m. on the ISKCON Aurangabad official Facebook page. Hare Krishna.